Hey guys, in my last video I showed you what I thought I did right at the American Cup, and in this video I'm going to show you things that I didn't do as well, but things that I felt were very instructive. And incidentally, they all took place in my matches with Alice Lee. So here is the first one. This is from our match in the Champions bracket, so our first encounter with each other in the tournament. And this was probably the most dramatic of all the games that we played. It went down to the wire into a rook end game. But at this point in the game, things were looking pretty quiet still, although I was, fairly happy with my position. But I got a lot happier with it when Alice played e4 because my feeling was that this move was very loosening. You got to be careful with pawn moves in chess. And the fact that this pawn was moving to the same color as the bishop that White had made it seem a little bit suspicious. Of course, I tried to understand it. What is my opponent hoping for? I assumed she wanted to push that pawn in further, then kind of capture with the bishop, maybe entrench that bishop with the c pawn. And I thought about this type of move, putting all my pawns on dark squares. In a way, it follows some principles, but White has many responses to this. And I certainly wasn't very enthused about this one, where White takes base on my king side. Then you constantly have to watch out for f6 ideas. So ultimately, I chose this move. I was very happy with that. It attacks the pawn, improves the bishop, and stops the move d5. Alice played e5, which I'd already figured was, what she was counting on. But for this move, Black just answers with f5. And I thought Black was, pretty much nearly strategically winning here. And the reason is this is a backwards pawn. That is a weakness. My bishop on this long diagonal is excellent. All my pieces seem really well positioned. I was extremely happy here. So she moved her bishop back. And I played bishop to d5. And yeah, by the way, if she goes c4, I could just go bishop e4, and then she's still not ready to play d5, and meanwhile, White center is collapsing. So she played rook d1. By the way, why was I willing to trade the bishops? I just thought this heavy piece endgame was very good for me. Just because we're trading doesn't mean we're going to a draw. And this is a weak pawn, and I would say also f4 is a bit weak potentially, and therefore the king. The difference between our positions is that although both of us have moved the f-pawn, my f-pawn is protected and White's f-pawn is not, right? Because this pawn is here instead of being on e3. And that actually means that in the long run, White's king is going to be weaker, right? So I just thought, well, I'm going to pile up on that pawn and it's just going to be so miserable for White. So she played rook d1. And here I just played, the obvious move, bishop takes b3 and rook d5. I thought everything was, this is a very safe and solid way of playing the game, where it would be very uncomfortable for White. But she found a good way to try to get a draw with his capture, breaking up her own pawn structure. And, it looks very ugly for White, but I actually don't really have a way to win material, because I have some issues with my own pawns as well. So later on, we traded queens, and I tried to win the rook endgame, but wasn't able to do so. So the computer, though, was suggesting this move. And I have to say that during the game, I didn't really look at a move like that seriously. And the reason is that it takes complete pressure off of White's center. So the backwards pawn that I was hoping to make an issue out of is like a non-factor here. So I'm also kind of closing up everything here, right? Like White center is super stable. So what's the big point of such a move? After bishop c2, well, the point is to turn your attention to the king side because the center is extremely stable now. So I was, of course, having ideas like this in mind, but the combination of c4 and g5, that's the new thing. And there's one more twist to things, because the point is actually not to take. You might think it would be, right? Just like take, get the open g file, try to attack. But the problem is that white has this idea of something like that. And if they can manage to challenge my bishop, then things are going to be absolutely unclear. So the real point of this c4 move is that. And now I have 2 pawns on the 4th rank, right? And they serve the purpose of ensuring that my bishop cannot get challenged. Because there's no challenge from this side, there's no challenge from here, and there's no longer any challenge from there. So really, this move has a very deep prophylactic point. It's really about preventing the trade of my excellent bishop, who is, one of the finest pieces you're ever going to see, I think, in chess, right? Just like absolutely open diagonal, defend stuff, but also can attack stuff. And the plan here for black is to add in that pawn and then start bringing in the rooks. I mean, you can do with maybe king g7, rook h8, maybe even rook g8, and like that. But basically, yes, there is going to be a coming attack on the h file. So yeah, very deep idea, really changing the focus from trying to attack the d4 pawn. And it just wasn't on my horizon at all. All right, so the next game, guys, is from our final match for the title, and it was our first rapid game because we tied 1-1 in the classical games. I was black. She played rook f1. I was already starting to realize that I could get myself mated. It was a rook sacrifice, but fortunately white can't just do this right away and then threaten the mate, because I have things like that will stop queen h5. But I was certainly very alert at this point that, like, hey, you better watch out because that bishop is super dangerous. So I played c5. I mean, I felt like I had to get some counterplay. But she had a very strong move here, bishop e6. Just establishing the bishop and letting me take the pawn because of the tactical point that she gets that pawn, and then my knight loses his square on d3, and I lose my d pawn. So I could have been in trouble here. But she took on c5 and only later put her bishop on e6. So I played h6 in order to not get mated, and then I was able to protect that pawn. She went there to not lose the pawn, and I'm pretty sure that she missed the move knight c5. I was extremely happy with that. It's a little sneaky because you're moving your knight backwards from a really nice looking square, so it's very easy to miss. And I do think it's kind of funny that in this position, both my knight and her bishop have an outpost. It's a pretty rare occurrence. But my knight leaves the outpost, and her bishop turns out to be trapped, like literally cannot escape from my knight. And she found a really good try here, though, queen c2. And the point is that if I take the bishop, she takes my pawn, and I don't have a way to keep my knight. So we're going to be like trading down. Now, I unfortunately cannot go there because she takes and I'm pinned. I can go there, but she will take and I'm going to have to give back my knight. And it's going to be pretty equal. So I realized that taking the bishop wasn't so favorable, and I thought, okay, what can I improve? And I came up with this move. It seemed to make a lot of sense to me, rook to the open file. But she played b4, and I was kind of forced to take this bishop. As much as I didn't want to, the bishop is very strong on e6. So I took, and then she went for her idea, and I am giving back the knight. And basically we got to an end game that was, okay, it's comfortable for black, but it's not a big deal for white either. So how could I have played this better? Well, if I would have had more time to ponder this situation, I would have realized that I need to really prepare for this rook e4 idea. And this move is paradoxically the best. It really is paradoxical because it feels like, oh, it's not an open file. Why are you putting your rook there? But the point is that you're preparing this move, and if she, let's say, attacks you as in the game, that by connecting the rooks, you're allowing this move to be possible. And now when she takes, you're not hanging your rook, you would actually be up a knight. So it's an amazing prophylactic move, right? Rook A E8, that's all it is. It's like, stopping opponents' ideas, preparing for them. And the bishop is still a problem. And by the way, if it tries to escape from you, you go b5, and it does escape, but then you just change plans and you go back to the d file, and you have a great position. Because now white's pieces have really lost their coordination, and the bishop is nowhere near as good on that square as it was on e6. You can always go back to d3, or in fact, just double up the rooks and invade, and just, yeah, beautiful position. White's pieces are not really working together here. So I have to say, guys, that rook a8 is a very deep and beautiful solution to the position. Didn't cross my mind. It's kind of like whole different level of thinking that you would need, especially in a rapid game, to have that kind of attention to nuance in a rapid game. You have to be a very, very strong player. All right, now we move on to our last example. Our final game in the championship, I was white, and I just needed a draw to win the match at this point. I'd played pretty aggressively, trying to attack on the king side, bringing my pieces there. Again, you can see that we have opposite sides castling, and my opponent was, kind of desperately trying to trade queens. I'm not even sure why I finally agreed to it at this point. Like, I had already been avoiding it for the last few moves, but I guess I thought, like, okay, I don't really see a way to break through with the queens on the board, and of course the endgame looks very comfortable for me, and I just need a draw, so I went for it, and then I went h5. By the way, you're threatening h6 and checkmate on g8. So she obviously doesn't want to allow that. She moved her knight in order to protect that square. I got to improve my bishop. She played rook f7. Maybe bishop f6 immediately was actually the right way to do it. But she played rook f7. I got to improve my knight, and then she played here. And now I missed a really beautiful win. And I just had no idea that there was such beauty lurking in this position. I really didn't want to trade the bishops, but I felt like I didn't have a choice. My bishop was trapped. But in reality, I have enough powerful pieces to make a move like this work. Just really being consistent with the piece improvement theme. And of course, the only issue is bishop takes bishop. Looks like I'm giving up a bishop, but now I'm threatening checkmate and the rook. And now I would have had the chance to finish the game in a really lovely and rare way, sacrificing more material and getting a smothered mate. And yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever gotten a smothered mate like that on the board, guys. It's something we see more in tactics books than in our own games. So it would have just been such a stylish way to win the tournament. I mean, I would have been so proud to see something like this. I mean, in any format, actually, but especially, in rapid, when you don't have much time to think. But unfortunately, yeah, I didn't have that sense like, oh, that I have such a winning line, and I just traded those bishops and completely lost my initiative and was even, quite lucky not to lose the game. And what I learned from this, guys, was that, when you have really good pieces, you got to make use of them. You got to look for those decisive continuations. The tactics will exist in a position when you have really good pieces. And of course, it would help to just do, do more tactics and be sharper tactically, because a line like this would come to your mind more easily. So even the next day when I played the St. Louis Blitz tournament, I already had in my mind, like, hey, I better be more decisive in positions where I have really good pieces, and it helps me in some games find good opportunities. But this was like a little bit of a wake-up call for me. I was like, oh, I didn't see knight g4 at all. It just didn't cross my mind that I had this beauty here. So yeah, these are some examples, guys, that I felt they're going to stay with me for a while. There's definitely something instructive in each of them, some deep stuff. And chess is a beautiful game, and you can always uncover some beauty when you go a little bit deeper into it. I'll see you soon.